trail bikes are designed to take you all over the mountain. They're not too heavy and sluggish on the climbs, and on the descents they have enough travel and durability to really be capable and a lot of fun to ride. Because of these characteristics, they're the most versatile type of mountain bike you can ride. They cover fast, flowy cross-country trails and pretty steep and gnarly descents. The only terrain they really don't cover is the super steep and technical descents that are better fit for a downhill mountain bike. The technology in trail bikes has come a long way in the last few years, from advances in suspension design, braking, dropper seat posts, wheels, drivetrain. These are all things that really come into play to make the experience of riding mountain bikes a lot more fun. Now, with the advancement in technology has also come an increase in price. So the question is, how much money do you really need to spend to fully enjoy mountain biking on a trail bike? And where is the diminishing returns where the more money I invest, I'm starting to get a smaller and smaller benefit? That's the question I want to tackle in this new project that I'm kicking off of comparing a mid-price trail bike with a higher-end trail bike. For this video, I'm going to be using two bikes that fit perfectly into the trail bike category. They are giant trances. One is a 2018 Giant Trance 2, which is an aluminum model, retails for about $2,800. The other one is a carbon fiber bike. It's a 2017 Giant Trance Advanced, and that retails for about $4,600. Now, the purpose of this test is not to focus on Giant and not to even focus on the Trance. The purpose of this is to compare what you get with a mid-price trail bike and what you get with a higher end trail bike. During this test, I'll focus on things like carbon versus aluminum frame, carbon versus aluminum wheels, Shimano Xt versus SLX, the higher end Fox suspension to the less expensive Fox suspension. Before I hit the trails on this project and start my head-to-head comparisons with these bikes, I want to show the bikes up close and talk about the differences. This video will not be a review of the bikes. I've done those in separate videos, which I'll link below in the description. So let's take a look at the bikes we'll be using for this project. We'll start by looking at the frames. The 2017 Trance Advanced is a carbon front triangle. So all of this is carbon, and then the rear triangle, the seat stays and the chain stays are aluminum. Whereas the 2018 Trance 2 is a full aluminum frame. Now, how far has the advancement in aluminum technology come? That's one of the things I want to find out in this project. Shifting and braking on the lower end trail bike is handled by SLX. So SLX rear derailleur, SLX cranks, and SLX brakes. Now, from my past experience, SLX brakes have not been that much different from Shimano Xt. It's been a while since I've used them, so I'm looking forward to see how they compare to the Xt brakes. On the higher end trail bike, you've got Shimano Xt, which is their next level of components above SLX. So the brakes and the drivetrain, to include the crankset and the rear derailleur, are all Shimano Xt. Now, both of these rear derailleurs do have the clutch that you can engage to reduce chain slap. The gearing on these bikes is slightly different. Now, both have a rear cassette that's an 1146. Both of these, by the way, are Xt cassettes. So this is an Xt cassette on the lower end trail bike as well. But the front chain ring on the lower end trail bike is a 30-tooth front chain ring, and it's a 32 on the higher end trail bike. Since we're talking about gearing, it's a good time to mention the weight of these bikes. The lower end trail bike comes in a little over 30 pounds, and that's with the water bottle cage and the pedals. And the higher end trail bike comes in right around 27 pounds, again, with the pedals, with the water bottle cage. The higher end Trance Advanced comes with Fox's highest end suspension, which is what they call the Fox Factory. And that is both with the front fork and with the rear suspension. Two of the main differences with Fox Factory versus the lower end is the fact that you have Kashima coating. So this is a coating that allows the suspension to move really smoothly, in theory. And it also allows for the open setting of the shock and the fork to be adjusted. So you've got 3 levels of adjustment that you can adjust your open setting, so the most plush setting. The same with the front fork. So here, not only can you adjust the compression damping, but in that open setting you can turn the black knob and get an adjustment of that open setting. Whereas on the fork of the lower end trail bike, you don't have that ability to adjust the open setting. So you really just turn this knob, so the more you turn it, the firmer the suspension gets to fully locked out. Same case with the rear suspension. You can adjust the setting of the rear suspension by going to fully plush, a middle setting, and then a more locked out setting. But again, on this open setting, you cannot adjust the plushness of that open setting. And on both the fork and the shock, you don't have the Kashima coating on the lower end trail bike, but you do have this black coating, which honestly I think looks pretty cool. The wheels on the higher end trail bike are carbon fiber, so the rims themselves are made out of carbon. Now I found from my past testing, the carbon fiber wheels make the biggest difference in ride quality, even more so than a carbon frame. On the mid-price trail bike, the rims are made out of aluminum. Now I'm really curious to see how these aluminum wheels ride. I've not hit the trails with these, and the rims are a little bit wider than previous models, so I'm curious to see the stiffness and how that translates into a better ride quality. I do want to mention that both of these rims are tubeless ready, and they are set up as tubeless. And as I mentioned in my first look of this 2018 Giant Trance 2, I am extremely happy that out of the box this wheel set came ready to go as tubeless, and it didn't even come with tubes. And that's one thing that I really am pleased to see in the mid-price trail bikes. It's something that you used to only see in the higher end trail bikes. The mid-price trail bike here actually came with some really nice tires, and these are not low-end spec tires. These are tires that you would typically see on a higher end trail bike as well. These are 2.4 tires. On the higher end Trance, I've got 2.6 tires. Even though this bike came with a 235 in the front and a 2.2 in the back, I did swap them out. So I think still this is going to be a very good comparison, because the width of these tires is not that different, and the tread is pretty aggressive on both of these tires. Looking at the cockpits of these bikes, on the 2017 Carbon Trance, you've got a 60 millimeter length stem and a bar that's 760 millimeters wide. Whereas on the 2018 Trance, the newer one, you've got a stem that's a little bit shorter, so it's 50 millimeters long, and the bar is a little bit wider, so it's 780 millimeters wide. And that's pretty much in line with the way we're seeing trail bikes go. They're getting wider bars and shorter stems. And cockpits, by the way, can really affect the handling of the bike. Now the change between these two is not too drastic, so I don't think that change is going to play too much into the comparison, but the shorter stem and the wider bar is going to make for a bike that handles a little bit more snappy, especially in the tighter, slower stuff. Looking at what's similar on these bikes, the frame geometry is the same, the suspension travel is the same, so it's got 150 millimeters of travel in the front and 140 millimeters of travel on the rear. Again, that's for both bikes. Both bikes also come with a dropper seat post that's actuated by a lever that I put on the left side of the bar. Both of these bikes have the wider boost spacing axle, so 110 millimeter wide axle in the front and 148 in the rear. And by the way, the axles on both of these bikes are through axles, both front and rear, which is pretty much the standard today in mountain biking. Finally, the brake rotors on both front and rear of both of these bikes are 180. So like I said at the beginning of the video, the purpose of this one is just to show these bikes that I'm going to be using in my mid-price trail bike project. So this week, I'm really going to hit the trails and start my comparison of these bikes. I'll do a week of riding on my local trails, and then I'm going to head to the mountains of North Georgia, where I'm going to take both of the bikes and do some back-to-back rides and get a feel of how these things do on climbs and descents on more rugged terrain. So stay tuned to the channel to really follow this project and see how these different types of trail bikes, different price levels of trail bikes really compare. Thanks for watching.